Iraq's young generation stands at a crossroads. They were born after the fall of Saddam Hussein, raised during years of war, sectarian violence, and instability, and today they are coming of age in an Iraq facing a very different kind of challenge, an economic one. The dinar crisis. For these young Iraqis, the currency is not just numbers on a screen or notes in their pockets. It's a daily struggle. Prices rise and fall with the dollar's rate, salaries lose value overnight, and dreams of stability often feel out of reach. Unlike their parents, who lived through dictatorship and sanctions, Iraq's youth have grown up in a society where access to the internet, global culture, and modern technology makes them acutely aware of how far behind Iraq has fallen. They can see, in real time, how their peers in other countries live. And they know the currency crisis is holding them back. Let's imagine a young university graduate in Baghdad. He studied engineering for 4 years, believing he would find a stable job after graduation. But when he enters the job market, he finds salaries barely cover basic expenses, especially when paid in dinars. Inflation eats away at the value of his income, while the cost of food, fuel, and rent rises with every fluctuation in the dollar's rate. The result? Even with a degree, he struggles to imagine a future where he can buy a home, start a family, or build savings. And it's not just Baghdad. In Erbil, in Basra, in Mosul, the story repeats. Iraq's young generation makes up more than half the population, but they feel trapped in a cycle of unemployment, corruption, and instability. The dinar crisis only deepens this frustration because it makes survival harder every day. When the central bank announces reforms, young Iraqis often react with skepticism. They've heard promises before about jobs, about reconstruction, about fighting corruption. Yet little changes. When the dinar was devalued in 2020, millions of families saw their purchasing power collapse overnight. Many of today's young adults were teenagers back then, watching their parents struggle to buy food or pay bills. That memory shaped their understanding of the economy. Unstable, unreliable, and unfair. But there's another side to this story. Iraq's youth are not just victims of the dinar crisis. They are also adapting, innovating, and finding new ways to survive. Some are turning to online work, freelancing for companies abroad, and getting paid in dollars instead of dinars. Others are investing in small businesses, cryptocurrencies, or trade networks that operate outside the formal economy. Social media has become a tool for raising awareness and sharing solutions. Everything from financial literacy to community projects that bypass broken institutions. This resilience is remarkable, but it's also telling. It shows that Iraq's youth no longer wait for the state to solve their problems. Instead, they are creating their own paths, even if it means leaving the country. Every year, thousands of young Iraqis emigrate, searching for better opportunities in Europe, the Gulf, or North America. For them, the dinar crisis is not just about money. It's about the future they may never have if they stay. Still, there's a danger here. A country cannot thrive if its young people lose faith in its future. If the dinar crisis continues, Iraq risks a brain drain, where its most educated and ambitious youth leave, while those who remain grow increasingly disillusioned. This creates a cycle of instability. Fewer skilled workers, weaker institutions, and deeper dependence on oil and foreign aid. But what does the young generation want? More than anything, they want stability. They want an economy where hard work pays off, where the value of their salaries doesn't collapse, and where they can build their lives without fearing the next crisis. They want transparency in government, fair opportunities, and an economy not tied so tightly to oil or the dollar. In short, they want dignity. The challenge is that Iraq's political and economic system has been slow to respond. Oil revenues still dominate the budget. Reforms move at a snail's pace, and corruption drains billions that could have been invested in jobs, infrastructure, and education. This disconnect between leaders and youth is dangerous. It fuels protests, like those that shook Baghdad and southern Iraq in 2019, where young Iraqis demanded change, chanting against corruption, unemployment, and poor services. Many of them were killed, but their voices still echo in Iraq's political discourse today. The dinar crisis plays into this unrest. When the currency weakens, frustration boils over. When prices rise, anger spreads. And when young Iraqis feel their future slipping away, they take to the streets. This is why the dinar crisis is not just an economic issue, it's a political and social one, too. So here's the big picture. Iraq's young generation is facing one of the toughest economic environments in decades. They are resilient, creative, and determined, but they are also impatient. They know what's possible, they know Iraq has potential, and they know the dinar crisis is a symptom of deeper failures in governance and policy. Whether they stay and fight for change or leave in search of a better future will define Iraq's trajectory for years to come. And that's where we'll pick up in part 2, the final part. We'll explore how Iraq's young generation could actually become the force that reshapes the dinar crisis into an opportunity, and what the future might look like if their voices are finally heard.
So where do we go from here? If Iraq's young generation has been shaped by the dinar crisis, can they also be the generation that ends it, or at least transforms it into an opportunity? The answer lies in 3 key areas: technology, civic engagement, and economic diversification. First, let's talk about technology. Iraq's youth are the most digitally connected generation in the country's history. They use smartphones, social media, and global platforms daily. Unlike older generations, they're not limited to Iraq's borders. They can freelance online, trade globally, and build businesses that don't depend solely on the local market. For many, earning in dollars through digital work is a lifeline, protecting them from the instability of the dinar. This shift is small but growing. Every young Iraqi who learns coding, digital marketing, or design is essentially creating their own financial shield against the crisis. In the long run, if enough young Iraqis embrace technology, they could spark a quiet economic transformation from the ground up. Second, civic engagement. Iraq's youth have shown they are not afraid to demand change. The protests of 2019 were just one example, but smaller movements happen constantly, in universities, in neighborhoods, in online spaces. These young people understand that economic reform cannot happen without political reform. They demand transparency, accountability, and efficiency. They want leaders who will prioritize jobs, education, and stability over power struggles. If this energy can be channeled into sustainable civic movements, perhaps even new political parties, the young generation could become a force that reshapes Iraq's institutions from within. That would directly impact the dinar crisis, because stronger institutions mean stronger policies, and stronger policies mean a more stable currency. Third, and maybe most important, is economic diversification. Young Iraqis know that oil dependence is a trap. They've watched as oil prices rise and fall, pulling the dinar up and down with them. They've seen how every budget crisis comes back to the same problem. Oil revenues are the lifeblood of the state, and when they shrink, everything else collapses. Iraq's youth are calling for investment in agriculture, tourism, renewable energy, and technology. They see opportunities to rebuild Mosul, to expand Basra's ports, to turn Iraq's history and culture into global attractions. These are not just dreams, they're survival strategies. Because unless Iraq breaks free from oil dependence, the dinar crisis will keep repeating. But let's be honest, change won't happen overnight. The older political elite is still in power and many benefit from the current system. Corruption is still widespread. And the global environment is uncertain, with oil prices, regional tensions, and U.S. policy all shaping Iraq's economy in ways young people cannot control. This is why the youth face such a difficult choice: fight to change Iraq from within, or leave and build their futures elsewhere. Now, imagine 2 futures. In the first future, Iraq's youth give up. They stop protesting, stop pushing, and simply adapt to survival. More of them emigrate, draining Iraq of talent. Those who remain work informally, scraping by, but never building stability. The dinar crisis continues, maybe even worsens, as Iraq's institutions grow weaker. In this scenario, the cycle of instability goes on, and Iraq risks becoming permanently dependent on the dollar, on oil, and on outside powers. But in the second future, Iraq's youth rise to the challenge. They demand reforms, they build new businesses, they pressure leaders to act. Some enter politics, others innovate in tech and trade, and together they create a momentum too strong to ignore. Slowly, corruption is challenged, institutions improve, and the economy diversifies. The dinar stabilizes, not because of a miracle revaluation, but because real reforms and real trust take hold. In this future, Iraq's young generation turns crisis into opportunity. The truth is, Iraq's youth are already moving in this direction. They are learning new skills, speaking up on social media, and refusing to accept the status quo. They may be frustrated, but they are also determined. And determination, when shared by millions, can become unstoppable. So, what does all of this mean for the dinar crisis? It means that while the current system may keep the dollar in control, the real hope for change lies in the young generation. Not in politicians, not in foreign aid, not in oil prices, but in the millions of young Iraqis who believe their country deserves better. If they can channel their frustration into action, then the dinar crisis could become the spark that ignites a new era of reform. Because at its core, this is not just a story about money. It's a story about identity, dignity, and the future. Iraq's young generation does not want to live forever in the shadow of crisis. They want stability, opportunity, and a currency that reflects the strength of their nation, not its weakness. And while the road ahead is difficult, one thing is clear. Iraq's future will be decided not by the crises of the past, but by the choices its youth make today. In the end, the dinar crisis is more than an economic problem. It's a generational test. And Iraq's young generation, despite all the odds, may be the only ones capable of rewriting the story.